It's Guild Ball Tonight, your independent source for Guild Ball news, information, and conversation. Episode 17, July 28th, 2015. All right, yes, and welcome to another episode of Guild Ball Tonight. Now, I'm your host, Phil, and joining me tonight is our co-host, Bill. How you doing, Bill?
I was really just waiting. I was going to have some witty opener, and then I figured I'd see if you remembered my name.
Well, I mean, they rhyme. It's easy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, that's the whole reason I'm on the show is I was able to slip through. You just thought you were bringing yourself on.
Well, you know, I often do talk to myself, and thus far, I'm not entirely sure that's not what I'm doing here. So... So what do we have going on tonight for the show? We're going to talk about a couple of news items in the pretty much all in the preview category for season 2. Then I think we'll do a quick little match report just to keep that fire burning, and then we will announce another contest because I enjoyed the first one sufficiently, and then I think we are going to dive into a really good set of Twitter questions that I got today because, I kind of taunted people into giving them to us, and they came in many and with high quality. So we've got a lot of content there. So let's go ahead and turn this on to the news and get going with the show. So the first preview that we got in the last couple of weeks came out pretty much right after we published the last show. So it's been sitting out there for almost 2 weeks, but definitely is still worth a discussion, and that is that they did give us a first look at the player Compound. Right, who is going to be a crossover player for the Alchemists and the Engineers. Now, doing that is going to, with one player, accomplish a couple of things. First of all, it's going to further the storyline interest, where the Alchemists and Engineers have something of an alliance going on behind the scenes, just due to their common interests. And so this sort of crossover player sort of fits into that. But from a more practical standpoint, this is going to, with one player, resolve the disparity in model count among the Season 1 guilds, where the Engineers and the Alchemists, by chance, had one fewer player than everybody else. So Phil, I gotta say, right.
I'm looking at the art of Compound.
Yes.
Now, I'm not a huge McKenna whatever fan, but he looks pretty cool. But I'm a little confused.
Okay.
First, for a guy that's playing for 2 Guild Ball teams and the number of games we kind of suspect they get in during a season, I don't understand how this guy is chubby. I'm thinking he has got to be playing at least 1.5 times as many games as everybody else in the league.
Right.
He should be the most fit freaking player. I mean, I'm just confused here.
Well, we don't. Perhaps he also plays for the Pastries Guild, but we just haven't gotten there yet. No, I think that I really like the art. This was when this idea of multiple guild players was first floated back around the retail release during the box watch Periscope video era. The combinations that were floated at the time being, I believe it was Engineers, Butchers, Alchemist, Fishermen, they concerned me a little bit because I liked the idea of a player who kind of bounced back and forth between 2 guilds. I was a little concerned with those specific combinations because I just didn't see how you could artistically achieve necessarily an engineer butcher who was going to be really convincingly both without it just being sort of a, stick this iconic thing and this iconic thing together, but they don't really flow as a single unit. But once that idea sort of was reshuffled and put together as just an engineer alchemist crossover, because they do sort of have a common interest in new technologies and in sort of the arcane mechanical gear. At that point, I could really see it working sort of in my mind's eye, but I was still curious to see what ultimately would come of the art. So when Compound's art was released, I was immediately very excited about him because I think that they did a really nice job of blending the two. There's sort of, he's got the pants and boots, pretty much lifted right off an engineer player.
Yep.
He's got the arms of an engineer player, but then he's got sort of the breath mask and bottles of an alchemist. And then what they did with the apron was really clever because they've given him the cut of an engineer apron, but by leaving off the cogs, it's sort of non-specific and maybe leaning a bit more towards something more like what Calculus's apron is like. So it's a really good blending of the two without it being juxtaposed or piecemeal. So I think that they've really accomplished the mission artistically. Now, we don't know what he's going to do from an on the field standpoint, but looking at him, clearly he seems to be in the bruiser class. And it's safe to say that both of those teams could definitely benefit from a bit more damage output. So I think that he may be answering some sort of on the field needs in addition to answering my own selfish artistic needs.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm still torn on how I feel about the idea of a two-team player.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the idea before it actually came out.
Yeah.
And now the more I look at him, it's not even the art. It's just the more I sort of look, I'm like, wow, as an alchemist player, right? I haven't picked up engineers yet, but how do I feel about that? How am I going to feel about potentially seeing that many more face-off type of situations?
Mm-hmm.
So where I'm playing with cloned players basically on each side of the field.
Well, at this point, he's unique in being a non-union cross-guild player, and I do not believe there are any other cross-guild players planned for Season 2 at this point. So he will be unique at least until Season 3. Right. And by being a player who has this ability but in such small number, he's pretty much going to have about the same odds of being duplicated as a union player. You're occasionally going to have, a rage on both sides of the field, and you're occasionally going to have a compound on both sides of the field.
Which is true, and I've been lucky so far not to have run into that.
Right.
So it's not something I will really worry about. And then, at this point, considering I'm the only alchemist player, at least so far in my area, really not a huge amount to worry about there either.
True. Well, I have a bit more competition for alchemist players in the area just because, I have to contend with the guy who helped create the alchemist team,
right?
Being down across the bridge here. But I'll still get to play him more than I'm actually right in the middle of painting my alchemist team right now.
Which they look great, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I'm 4 players in, which is a good start.
I will say I do agree. I did see a Twitter comment come out. I don't remember who made it, but yeah, I think without the lips, if I ever get partway into a game in a tournament against you, Phil, I will definitely have to have your badly formed bases make sure that you're disqualified to go for the win. But that's just because I'm a competitive git.
I understand. Well, I still say that technically, according to the organized play document, my bases are illegal. However, I have been assured by a quality source in the know that they would never do such a thing. But because my bases are not painted, which is how the organized play document words them. So
yeah, I was looking more at the fact that you don't have that nice lip of the rounded bases.
They're 30 millimeters wide. So,
let's talk about our other preview.
Right, and this one was fun because unlike most of these other news items where we just report on something that sort of passively came along. This one we actually got to make the news item, in a manner of speaking, because I was given a piece of artwork this morning by one of the Bothan spies.
And then told, go
and then
leak
told,
it.
Yeah, go show. You can show this to somebody if you want. So I was like, I'm going to show it to everybody. So, of course, being me, I couldn't just show it to people. I had to kind of make them work for it. So, I was just showing little pieces of this player until I got enough Twitter questions for the show, and then I just let everybody see it. So what we got was the concept art for Bonesaw, who is the new player for the Morticians. Now, we had previously seen the concept art for this player in the Doug Telford concept art gallery. And I think actually it's the first we've gotten his name, but we had some ideas that he was coming, of course. And I have to say, this figure, while I have seen some people point out that his pose is fairly similar to Gast on his own team, I really like the pose and style of this player. He's another one of what we've seen several of so far for season 2, which is sort of Asian inspired characters. I know that at some point in the very distant past, Matt or Rich had mentioned on a podcast interview that they were going to start introducing this sort of Eastern influence, and sort of imply that there's sort of another land in the game world that's starting to provide players. And so at this point, we've seen Sakana and Smoke and now Bonesaw all have that Asian feel. So, they're definitely following through on that. And yeah, I really like this player a lot. I hope that he fits properly on his 30 millimeter base because he's got quite a wide stance.
That was one of the things I was curious about. Is he has that wide stance, but as far as we know, he's a smaller base guy, right?
Well,
that's what
we know nothing about his profile, so in theory, perhaps it could be some sort of a strange. He covers a lot of ground player.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, but we're suspecting. So I can see him coming off as a Gast junior.
Yeah, some sort of a midfield player, sure.
I'm definitely looking forward to putting the two of them next to each other since it looks like they're speed skating.
All right.
So, hey, if you just look, and if you haven't gotten it, put the two pictures side by side. Right? Go to the Guild Ball page, pull up the Gas picture, and pull up the of the Guild Ball Tonight Twitter.
Yep.
So, I'm looking forward to it. The Bonesaws do look cool. Missing the chains. I just, the only place I'm a little bit worried is he does look a bit like a bald Gast. But he kind of, I don't know. I went back and looked. I didn't remember him looking that close in the art, but he did kind of look that way in the art. And the reason I'm really guessing at that 30 millimeter base simply has to do with he's smaller in the
right. He's average human height, right?
Right.
It's just too bad he's a Mortician kind of a thing, because I really like the figure, but Morticians are not one of my first choice teams because of my just indifference to their their play style. You know, I prefer something a little bit more direct and a little bit more playing football. But it's a really nice figure, and you know, I'm going to be looking forward to getting it and to painting it, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun to turn that guy out. So,
and I do think he you know, I'm about to say this, which is I think he's going to take paint incredibly, because they've done such a good job of translating these sculpts or these renders into the final sculpts. But so far, every damn one of the Guild Ball models I've painted has taken paint in an incredible way. Right. So, you know, this is just yet another model that's going to look really nice for subpar painters like me.
Well, you know, I haven't disliked a model that I've worked on yet. I mean, there's a handful that I feel like I want to tweak, you know, in terms of what they look like. You know, like my Alchemist team, only Flask is sort of unchanged. Everybody else, I just put a little personal touch on, and it's not because there was anything wrong with any of them. It's just, you know, I'm a former miniature sculptor. I have the ability, and I'm going to do strange things to miniatures because I'm just compelled to. So there's a handful of figures in the line that maybe they don't tickle me the way that they are. You know, Cassette is probably a great example. I'm not a huge fan of the Cassette miniature the way she is, but the couple of things I want to do to that figure will turn her into one of my favorite figures, because I just see something there that, you know, from that foundation, there's a little tweak that I want to make, and it'll be, I think, a really cool, you know, unique figure. So
now, what did you do to Midas? I'm looking at the picture of your four that you have, and I'm missing what you
Midas is very subtle. Midas had no collar to begin with. Oh. So I put that big sort of swashbucklering collar, but also in the very subtle category, that big collar he has forms a giant M. And I figure he's the kind of guy who's going to brand.
Okay, yeah, I see it now that you mention it.
Yeah,
as I'm looking at the picture, but yeah, I would completely miss that.
Right, it's subtle.
I think the flask is kind of interesting that you did, and the gas mask. I agree. That was I think you posted and said, you know, it was due to be done.
Yes,
anyways.
It had to be done. So it was waiting. The universe was expecting it to happen. So yeah, and then for Vitriol, she's the least changed of all, actually. I thought that the little bulb on the end of her sword cane or whatever she's got needed to be a flask, so I just added a flask spout to the end of it.
Oh, nice.
And then for Catalyst, the changes that I made to him is I added some hoses running from his tanks on his back to his mask, you know, sort of an aqualung sort of a thing. And then I got rid of the mohawk, because I figured, you know, a brilliant scientist doesn't have a scruffy mohawk. He's got a bald head. You know, every brilliant scientist is bald.
That's fair. I got to admit, though, on Mercury, as much as I love the flask that you sculpted in, his pose with the flame in both hands is actually one of my... it's up there among my favorite models.
Well, the reason I did that is because I wanted to sort of take away the implication that he was like a sorcerer.
Right.
So like the implication now is, you know, he's used the potion in the one hand to create the effect in the other. And I think it just sort of puts a point to that they're alchemists and not wizards. So, I mean, it's sort of it's an artistic move as much as, or in place of a vanity move to just tweak my miniatures. You know, I didn't do anything dramatic to my masons or engineers that I painted first, mostly because I just wanted to get some teams done but also
Right.
because there wasn't a lot I felt I needed to do. You know, I rebuilt Mallet's hammer because I just thought it was flimsy. I made a very subtle adjustment to one of Flint's arms, but other than that, it was pretty much straightforward with both of those teams. But I didn't really feel like they needed anything. I mean, they would have just been these little vanity touches anyway, but I wanted to get a couple of teams ready to go. And now I'm kind of taking my time and being a bit more sort of hobbyist about what I do from here forward. So yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with the miniatures. I mean, they're great miniatures. They're fun to paint. They're fun to manipulate and a lot of fun to play with, as it turns out, which,
Yep.
you know, that combination of fun to play and fun to paint, not always available. So, definitely enjoying what we've got.
Well, on that same sort of news front, I have hit 7 of my 10 in hand Union players painted up.
Excellent.
So my plan is this week, since I've been traveling for a couple of weeks for work, to actually get my Union on the table finally.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I'll be looking forward to hearing what you do with some of the different lineups there.
Yeah, I was going to say something that is not a Mason's AAR.
Speaking of Mason's AARs,
And there's the transition.
Man, we're good at these. So, I did get a game in over the weekend, and it was the now compulsory Masons versus Engineers. So, not really going to spend a lot of time on this, other than to bring up the thing that was different in this game, in as much as we're trying out more Union substitutions with these two lineups. And I know that that's a topic that a lot of people have asked us about. You know, who do you replace and why? The Engineers went with he did Rage in for Colossus, which was a combination that has proved popular. I dropped Brick because I've been having some issues with Brick lately, as much as I love Brick. I dropped him for Decimate, which is a combination that I'm sort of desperate to make work because I seem to be the only one who doesn't. But okay. I really felt like at the end of the game, the Union players didn't contribute a lot to the outcome of the game. Now, it was a weird game because I essentially I made the game just a big scrum in the middle of the field, which, you know, in that matchup is a huge advantage for me. And then just, you know, tweaked some goals coming out of the middle and chased Velocity around anytime she tried to run off with the ball. Mm-hmm. It was not the most fun game ever because it was basically a fist fight. And, you know, it's not the kind of game that I like to play, but it was the game that I won. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, sometimes you play the game that you don't like because you're trying to play the game. But Rage is not... Rage sort of has some of Boar's problems, but more so in a scrum like that. Because if you take away his ability to charge, he's going to swing twice and maybe, you know, do 6-7 points of damage on a good combination, but often much less. Or he's going to do that tool up trick. Whereas if he's unengaged, then he's going to be able to charge. He's going to be able to do those two swings and still tool people up. And, you know, the tooling up was what was kind of cited as the benefit that he was bringing to the Engineers team, because he makes all those range damage plays more potent. So he was never, because I kept him occupied and engaged, he was never really able to sort of be what he was advertised as. Now, on the other side, Decimate was just starved for influence the whole game. I just couldn't justify giving her more than 1 or 2 points
Really?
Because, well, I just had too much else to do. I was stacking a lot on, I was throwing a lot on Honor and a lot on Mallet because I was trying to get a couple of casualties, and my opponent was, the engineers generate so much momentum that I was hard pressed to knock people down faster than you could heal them. So in the end, I settled for a 3-goal win because I couldn't get the 2 casualties that are my usual formula, right? He got the 2 casualties, by the way. I didn't.
Now, are you... I mean, of course you have Flint in there, but was Decimate able to move in at all as sort of a backup or a secondary kicker?
At one point I had Decimate chasing Velocity, but it was actually Harmony who ended up getting the ball off of Velocity, because Velocity has the close control.
Okay. Yeah.
So I needed. It was always work to get the ball off of her. I think one time I did a 6 influence. For my first goal, Velocity had the ball and was trying to kind of sneak around the outside, and I threw 6 influence on Honor because I had the initiative, and just went in and swung away because she's hard to get to tackles on because of her high defense.
Right.
But because it was change of turn, she didn't have an opportunity to put up nimble. So I had the 5 defense instead of the 6. So Honor just went in, and I think it still took me like 4 attacks to get the 2 tackles.
Oh, wow.
But I still had the influence left to chip the ball over to Harmony, who was able to then do a consecutive activation and go get the goal. So, although she started too far away to get the family benefit, 2-6 is still enough for a chip shot.
Right.
So, I mean, Decimate didn't impress just because I didn't give her the opportunity to. I was... And that was probably more me than Decimate, because I just, maybe I don't trust Decimate yet. When it was game breaking in time, I was throwing my influence on Harmony on Honor and Flint because they were the players who I trust to win me the game.
Now, how were you moving the ball around the table once you got the ball? I mean, I guess I should ask. So you did it all on goals. So the ball ended up in your opponent's hands most of the time. You weren't really moving the ball other than get the ball away from him, pass it, and shoot. Right.
And that's really what it was. It was take away and shoot. So 2 goals basically came out of the scrum. He had Velocity working on the right, on his right, my left, and I got it away from him the first time, scored. He tried to go back to Velocity again, and I chased him down, got the ball off of him, and moved it over to Flint, who scored because he couldn't. That one was very complicated. I can't off the top of my head remember the full series of events, but there was a salvo knockdown and a free ball and then a momentum.
Yeah.
It was one of those scrambles for the ball, and then Flint ends up with it and kicks a goal kind of a things. Then the last goal, he had kind of learned his lesson going right because I was punishing him on the right side. And so he went left, but unfortunately all he had on the left was Ballista. So Ballista gets the ball, and Ballista had basically just been sitting there doing sniper shots from the left side the whole turn, and I'd been more or less leaving him alone because I was generating enough momentum to just clear all the knockdowns that he was putting on me. But so he goal kicks the ball out to left, Ballista goes and chases it down, and So he was looking at a situation where Decimate was within reach of him with that low tackle, and Harmony had done a maneuver earlier on to end up on the other side of the field, on that side of the field towards the goal, kind of ball hawking.
Yep.
So was in a good position to receive a kick from Decimate if she got the ball off. So he punted, just trying to put the ball downfield, and the objective was to break up the scrum and have everybody just go running around. But in the end, I just had faster players, so I just got the ball back into the scrum. It bounced around a little bit, and then ended up on Harmony's foot. And, she got that final goal. So, I mean, it was just a messy game, and the objective of it was to sort of test the contributions of these Union players, because we're still looking for those alternate lineups to play with. But I just didn't. I have a sense that maybe Decimate gave better service in that game than Brick would have, because Brick's ability would have been negated that whole game in a tight scrum like that. He never would have gotten off a countercharge. And with his low defense, he probably would have been taken out quicker. As it was, the Mallet ends up going down, and Flint ends up going down before that final goal. But had Brick been in there, he would have been taken out, I think, much sooner, just because he's such an easier target when he's not able to get that separation that he needs to do the things that he does.
Right.
So, I think Decimate is a good fit for the Masons. I'm curious to try Minx once I get that miniature. I haven't really played with Minx because I've never had the miniature, so I haven't put a lot of work into Minx, but
I feel like a lot of people are in that situation, though, that we're gonna see more discussion on Twitter and Facebook and everything about Minx now that the model is shipping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually there is a Minx here in the Bay Area with my name on it right now. I just need to figure out a way to get it. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I tried Mist one time, and I just don't really feel like he fits into the Masons lineup, because he distracts you from doing what you need to do, and maybe as a replacement for Harmony against a brawling team that's going to take her out. But I think somebody like Decimate or Snakeskin, who's more of a backup striker as opposed to an outright striker, is maybe a better fit there. Yeah, all in all, I think Decimate is definitely a good fit for that team. I just haven't. I think it's just a matter of trust. I haven't kind of developed my playbook for her yet. So I'm going to keep at it. I don't think that. I don't think that the engineers. I don't think he is going to be quick to use rage again. I know that he was not pleased with kind of how buttoned down rage was, but there's other Union options there that we're going to explore in future games. So no, it's I think that's it's interesting that, like, no Union player is going to be terrible for your team, but there's definitely some that, especially given matchups, there's some that just seem to work better or worse. And we're still just exploring those possibilities and those combinations and trying to work out what works best. So I will say that Decimate's 2-inch reach and copious repositioning abilities all came in handy. She did not necessarily, and the way a lot of people view her is sort of as a momentum vending machine, but because I never put enough influence on her,
She wasn't doing a lot.
I wasn't really getting that effect. So, yeah, it all just comes down to how much you prioritize that player. I think she can do good service if you're giving her 3 or 4 influence a turn. I just had trouble giving it to her, so we'll see.
And maybe it would be an easier time if you weren't playing Masons, where you already have 2 really, you got 2 players on that team with Flint and Honor who just eat through influence.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was a little easier to give her influence on the turns I didn't think Flint was going to score, but, that's like 1 turn in a game. So, Flint just sort of gets 3 influence, right? I mean, it's just an automatic. And then when I really need to pull off something cool, he gets 4. It's one of those things. But
so I got to say, when you started talking about having Decimate in there, what I was really hoping you had used her for was to move the ball around with her jog and whatnot, because that's sort of where I'm planning on using Decimate and Mist, right? Mist in the Union being my replacement for Flint as a shooter, and then Decimate to be able to move the ball around and get it over to Mist to take that shot.
Yeah, that bonus jog ability on Decimate I found hard to use because, first of all, because it was just a scrum game, nobody needed to move that far.
Right.
Until the end of the game when the ball was punted away, but I had players coming back onto the field. That was probably the worst tactical mistake of that game, was to do a punt when I had players coming back on who were just going to be able to punch the ball back up the other direction. Because Mallet just came back in and delivered it into the middle of the scrum, and it was pretty much over at that point. And but had I been playing a more running and gunning game, it may have come in handy. But the trick there is that I think it's only got a 4-inch range, so you've really got to have the player who's getting that buff and Decimate working close together, and then after you use that ability, they're no longer close together. So it's like you can't kind of run as a pack using that ability. It's like you've got to position your players for that effect, and a lot of times I just don't need to move that far.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't think that's the ability that's going to differentiate Decimate. I think it's the ability to move a lot and generate a fair bit of momentum while doing it. Yeah. That's really going to differentiate Decimate. So I'd said that was going to be a quick match report. So let's go ahead.
I think we're good.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on. So the next item up for business here is that we are going to do a new contest. Now, this is going to be a bit more of a long-term contest in that we may not know who wins this thing until at least the end of the year.
I know who's going to win.
Oh, who's going to win?
Yeah, it's my daughter. Oh, crap, I said that out loud.
No fair. All right, so this contest is, now, as we all know, every team is going to have one player who is going to get a Season 2 veteran incarnation. There's going to be one player on each team who's going to be reimagined for Season 2.
Right.
And they are going to be mutually exclusive, so you will not be able to play the Season 2 boiler if you've already put your Season 1 boiler into the game. Not to say that I know anything about boiler. He's just my go-to example for some reason. So this contest is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. What I want everyone to do is to just send me an email, and please send me an email this time, guys, at guildballtonight@gmail.com. Just send me a list of 8 players, one from each team, your guess as to which player on every team from Season 1 is going to get a Season 2 veteran. Send me those 8 players once we know for sure who those 8 veterans are, we'll be able to judge the end of this contest. So it's very open-ended at this point because, as far as I know, none of them are public knowledge. Now, if you are in a position to know some of these players, maybe you shouldn't enter the contest. But because I know who you are.
Anyway.
Yeah, email us anyway because I'm always curious. But I know who you are. So, and I will say I don't even know who all these players are. And I think there's only 2 guys anywhere who know who all these players are. And that may be it. So I think it'll be an interesting contest. It'll be a very long contest. Obviously it's going to be months in the making. And I don't know what the prize is going to be at this point because I kind of need to figure out what kind of a prize this deserves by the time it's all said and done. So I do want to close the entries at the end of August because I assume that there's going to be spoilers on this at some point. So sometime between now and the end of August, send me that list of 8 players. I will throw your entries into a folder, and in a few months it'll be like a Christmas present that we all open and see who won. So
I like it.
Yeah, so a bit more of an informal contest than the last one. A bit more of a prognostication than a tactical quiz. But we're gonna have some fun with it, and I'll be curious to see how many of us are good at this game because I suspect some of these players are going to be obvious, and some of these players are going to be huge surprises. And so it's going to be, who sort of takes the risks or follows the breadcrumbs who maybe gets the high score on this one. So have fun with it. I know I'm going to. So
well, and I don't think anybody should take my guess, which is let me see. Coin plays for the Union, and a Snakeskin plays for the Masons, and Rage plays for the Butchers. Oh, wait, it's not the whole Union team, is it?
No. I mean, you can just guess.
You can
everybody
guess that?
Changes teams. I don't know that you're going to do well. I mean, You can, but I'm not going to stop you from guessing or entering. I'm just going to stop you from winning.
Okay.
So, let's move on to Twitter questions. All right, so this week we got a good crop because I made people ask Twitter questions as a condition for releasing that Bonesaw image. So I got quite a few to choose from here, and a long list. And 45 minutes into the show already. I don't think we're going to get to all of them, guys. But you pretty much have come to expect that at this point. I'm sure
they knew that. We're going to store them up like we did last time, and then not ask them when we get to another episode where we do all the questions.
One of these days, a recording session is going to fall apart, and I'm just going to open up. Twitter and find all these missing Twitter questions and answer them, and that'll be the show. Hold your breath. So. The first question on the list this week was from Order of Ortega, who is a frequent contributor to these questions. And he asked us, do you let your opponent pick their team for demos? So this kind of gets into a bigger discussion of what makes, of just sort of demo technique. What makes a good demo?
And that's a great question. Phil, how do you demo? Because you are, right. I read on Twitter, a pundit.
Oh, that's what they tell me. I just think I'm an over-enthusiastic, over-contributor to the game myself. So I've sort of had 2 phases of my experience giving demos for Guild Ball. So when I first started doing demos, I was very much of the belief that what you wanted to do was ask somebody what style of team they like to play and give them a starting group of players from the team that most match their play style, and then to put something on the other side that was maybe a good matchup for it. And, sort of trying different size games, whether it was the full 6 players or 3 or 4, and generally doing it on a 3x3 game board because that's what I had available. A lot of those demos were rough. And what I found in a lot of cases was that sometimes the matchups just don't go well. We had a demo one time where we had engineers on one side and butchers on the other, and the player playing the engineers was very frustrated with the game because he didn't have anybody with a 2-inch reach who could negate Brisket's ability to just bounce away with the ball. So sometimes there's just bad matchups when you do that. So what I have found, though, is that once I switched to using the quick start rules, using that sort of stock matched pair of fishermen and butchers, doing it according to the suggested format where the recipient of the demo plays butchers and starts with the ball, and the person giving the demo plays fisherman. Use the quick start version of the players who have their abilities simplified and the ranges and speeds adjusted to that 2x2 game board. That the quality of the demos that I was giving went up dramatically, and the people I was giving demos to had a much better initial experience with the game because it worked better. There was a better balance. The ranges made more sense. Things didn't happen too fast or too slow. And, now, is it maybe that I just gotten better at describing the game? Maybe. Is it that the people I gave those first few demos to maybe weren't as receptive as the people I gave later demos to? Maybe. But, when the guys at Guild Ball are giving demos, they're using those quick start rules. They're doing a lot of these demos, and they're being very successful with them. And I think that there may be something to that.
Yep.
Now, the downside...
I was going to say, here comes the big question.
All right.
Somebody's out there and has 2 teams. Mm-hmm. They want to give a demo, but their 2 teams are neither the fishermen or the butchers.
Right.
Do you go with 3 players on the team? Which players do you go with? Do you go with the 6 players? Like, what do you do in that case?
Well, I think that if you are committed to the idea of only giving a demo with miniatures, that the starter box of every team except maybe Union will work to an extent.
Okay.
But my question is simply, why do you feel like you have to use the miniatures? Can you show the miniatures off and then pull out paper dolls?
And that's a valid and interesting question,
right? Because that's what I've done in several cases. Is I've got my travel case open with all these awesome miniatures, but then I'll say, all right, now let's play a game, and here we're just going to use these cardboard stand-ups because I don't have these guys painted yet.
Right.
Now at this point, I do have those guys painted yet, but I, have the advantage of owning all of them. And so, but I think that there's no, if you're able to show off the product, I don't know that switching the paper dolls for the demo is a huge step down.
That's
and
fair.
I think it's easy to say, look, I didn't pick these teams, but this is the best demo we can give. Because the demo is different from the full game, but the full game is a bit too much for a demo.
Right.
And I don't think people will hear that and think that there's balance issues with the game. I think what they'll hear is, yeah, if you're only playing with half as many people on half as big of a field, maybe you need to do something a little different. especially if you present it as such.
That's
but
fair. I could see that.
But that said, if you pick your opposing force well, I think any starter set can be used as a playable demo if you've got enough other starter sets to put on the other side. I think that there are good matchups and bad matchups, and there's, I'm not sure that you want somebody playing Morticians or against Morticians in a starter because they're going to do things that are too disruptive. I think that, if one of the teams has a player with unpredictable movement, you want to make sure the other team has somebody with a 2-inch reach. So you can say, but there's a counter for this very powerful ability, and here's what you do. So, yeah, I think it just takes a little bit of thought, a little bit of preparation, and if you don't have a deep well of miniatures to choose from, don't be afraid to use paper dolls. They served us really well for a really long time, and they can, they still have some benefit to give. But, if somebody's going to like the game, maybe they're going to like the game either way. I don't know. I can only speak from my experience, and my experience has been better, but it may be that I simply was in a better situation, and it wasn't the teams that I picked, it was the opponent that I was demoing for.
Right.
So it could be any of them. So the next question was one I thought was an interesting thought experiment. That was Lee Perry asked us, what bonuses would you use for a home and away team format? So that's, the situation where you wanted to say that one team was playing at home and maybe they get an advantage from being in front of their home crowd. Now, this is a thing that, Blood Bowl experimented with rules for this many times, a lot of unofficial house rule kind of things. And a lot of times they were unbalanced, and a lot of times they were disruptive. What I would say for something like this is you don't really want to give somebody a perk or a slap that is really going to change the outcome of the game. You don't want home field advantage to be more than a trivial advantage. If it's a bit of flavor in a league, especially in a casual league setting, maybe it's just a little bit of fun, but you got to be careful and not let it dictate terms. So what I think I would do in this situation, I saw some people reply in a Twitter thread about, maybe manipulating the way momentum was generated. That's really the way I don't want to go. You don't want to start affecting core mechanics of the game. So what I thought was maybe the most obvious and perhaps the most effective way to deal with that mechanic and still give it enough teeth to matter, but not enough influence to really change the game, was maybe to manipulate the number of plot cards.
Yeah, so you and I are thinking the same.
Mm-hmm. So you could perhaps do something like right now you're dealing 6 plot cards, or you're holding 6 plot cards. Maybe we change that number from 3 and 3 to 4 and 2. But you still get dealt the same 5. It's just one player gets to hold 4, one player only gets to hold 2.
So that's interesting. I went another way with that, which is I would actually leave the visiting player the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the home team player actually gets to draw one additional plot card.
Mm-hmm.
Now, both teams can still only hold their 3.
Right, but they get one more to choose from.
From, which also gives them the advantage of seeing one more. Mm-hmm. That's, knowing a little bit more about what is and isn't in play.
Yeah, no, and I think either one of those would work. It's a matter of degrees. I think the one I suggest is maybe a little bit heavier than the one you suggested, but they would both generate the effect. And And in that sort of, we want to be a little simulationist league setting, it would accomplish the goal, but it wouldn't mess with the game. So I think that's the way I would definitely approach that.
And I really think in my opinion, that was what I thought plot cards, that's exactly the type of situation I thought plot cards were in here for. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. How do we advance the game season to season? We can issue new plot cards as well as new models. How do we adjust home team and away team? How do we adjust worse, more hostile crowds? Or how do you adjust, just how do you tweak the game just that little bit to give it flavor? Mm-hmm. And like I say, that's what I felt the plot cards were in the game for.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that I think plot cards give you a lot of options for distorting, maybe not distorting, but for influencing sort of the handicapping aspect of the game, if that's an effect that you are looking for. And it's something you're only going to see outside of sort of competitive play. But, non-competitive play is, of course, the realm of my, of my preference for the game anyway. So it's definitely something I've got in my head, especially more so now. I hadn't really considered it before today, but I've given it a fair bit of thought today. I thought it was a really interesting question to start pondering. And, once we see the campaign rules that come out with Season 2... I wouldn't be surprised if something along those lines wasn't in them, but, it may be something to perhaps supplement if it's not an outright inclusion. So
there's an area you mentioned, maybe not for campaign play, except that, for competitive play, except that I think for competitive play, that's exactly where these types of things for the plot cards work best, right? Because you're not changing the game so drastically as to put one opponent or the other onto uneven footing. Mm-hmm. But by the same token, let's say I'm running a competitive tournament. Maybe what I'm going to do is I can change up all my plot cards, or this is another way to do it. In this game, you could change it so it's not even a home and away advantage. Mm-hmm. In this game, everybody gets penalized one additional plot card, and everybody's only playing with two.
Or if you wanted to do something with weighting seeds, if you want to give a low seed an advantage or a high seed a perk, maybe you could do that with plot cards as well. There's a lot of opportunity there. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So.
Okay, 2 down. We're rocking.
I know. We maybe could have gotten through 3 or 4 this week. So the next question was from Owen Brennan, who asked, when Midas copies Scything Blow, is he the best damage dealer in the game? The answer is yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Midas is the best damage dealer in the game with Scything Blow. And I don't think that there's a balance issue there, because if you were foolish enough to line up against the Alchemist with one of the 3 players who has Scything Blow, you kind of deserve what you got. It's your fault that he's doing that to you.
Now, have you found Scything Blow to be... I know I've heard people talk about, any team that can take Gutter does really well. But have you really found Scything Blow to be that amazing?
On the 3 players who have it natively, which is, Gutter, Meat Hook, and Harmony.
Yep.
No, it's not a game changer. It's a toolbox. If you can get them into a position where they've got more enemy players around them than friendly players, and you want, or you're having trouble with a high armor or high defense player, then it's a good tool. But in a lot of cases, especially one-on-one, and where defense is not a problem, it's not necessarily going to be better than just taking a regular swing. Sometimes less so with Harmony, who doesn't have as good of a damage output aside from Scything Blow.
Right.
But certainly in the case of Gutter. But it's just a very useful skill. I mean, it's if you've got somebody out there, if you're going up against engineers, and you're going to have to figure out a way to deal with Velocity 6 defense, or you're lined up against Hemlock, who you've got to deal with their 6 defense. The dependability of Scything Blow as this sort of that radial damage starts to pick up. Now, of course, for anybody who's not aware of why we say that Midas is so dangerous with Scything Blow, what you need to understand is that Scything Blow, from the players that he gets it off of, is a 1 Guild Ball icon trigger ability.
Right.
Now, the players who have that, you're looking at like a 4 or 5 column
I think Harmony's
activation.
on a 5.
Right. When Midas gets that ability, it's on a 1.
And
now, Midas can hold 7 influence. Do the math. All right?
It's momentum generating.
Yes, and it's momentum generating, by the way, which lets him trigger his heroic play, which adds 1. Actually, no, it doesn't add damage to it because it's not a playbook result, but he's going to be running around with extra move or armor instead. So, yeah, he does a ferocious amount of damage reliably with Scything Blow. And like I said, it's not broken because it's your fault. It's just one of those things. So, yeah, it is a great effect when you get it, and you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. So maybe don't. So all right. So let's do. I suspect this question might go a little long, so it might be our last question of the night. But Andrew Masora asked, if you could design a guild, who would they be, and what would be their play style? Now, for me, there's really 2 guilds that I would really like to see in the game. One for sort of the miniatures alone, and one because I think that they would be very interesting from a story standpoint. Now, in both of these cases, I'm not really all that interested in their play style, but that's, I guess, to be expected from me. Now, the ones that I think would be really interesting from a story and a plot standpoint are blacksmiths. Okay. And they're really an obvious, professional guild to choose. I think that they could be interesting from a story standpoint, in as much as, here is a profession which is perhaps endangered by the march of progress in this world. You've got the engineers and the alchemists out there doing weird and wonderful things with, with metal and with devices, and sort of moving out of the era of just pounding steel with a hammer. And in some respects, this is sort of a transition that our own world underwent at some point. But here in the Guild Ball world, you've sort of got that happening at that moment. So, you could have a lot of sort of antagonism between the Blacksmith Guild and the Engineers Guild, and a lot of, plots happening in the story as a result of that. And as sort of a guild that is feeling under a certain existential pressure, is there still going to be a blacksmith guild in 5 years, in 10 years? And how do they react to that? Are they trying to sabotage the other guilds, or are they just, are they fading away, or are they desperately trying to have one last hurrah? There's just different ways that you could approach that guild in the story. And I think it would be interesting. And, obviously they'd be another great brawler guild concept if you needed one. Big, strong guys with hammers, right?
Yeah. I find it interesting you went that way, as much as you like shooting goals.
Well, but like I said, it's not about their play style. It's not about the game effect. It's about, I just see an opening there for a great story to tell.
Okay. I went cheap. I went cheap and pandering, cheap seats, $1 and $5 tips, and went directly to the Seamstresses Guild.
Yeah.
You know, from a play style standpoint and sort of the theme and everything, I think the first thing they do is they start up the Seamstresses Guild, and they go with all of their, wherever they get their art from. There's a sculptor out there, HEC, Heck. Mm-hmm. He did a lot of the pinup Kingdom Death models. Mm. He did a lot of the more egregious Relic Knights models. Mm-hmm. So you have him do all the sculpting. And it's an all-female team. And it has some lures. And it has some dodges. And, you know, I'm not going to say they move quick. They should move in a slow, sultry manner.
Ah, excellent. Well, you know, it would be an interesting way for them to go at some point in the future, because one of the things that really stands out about Guild Ball is that they didn't go cheesecake.
Yeah.
You know, they're really, you know, while a lot of the female players in the game are clearly very attractive, they haven't sort of gone
they're not over the
easy,
top at all.
Right? And they're, you know, they're not falling out of their clothes. They're not wearing high heels. They're wearing,
well, except for Brisket.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's sort of the exception that proves the rule, right?
Right. No, I agree. I agree completely.
And but you know, nobody's running around in a chainmail bikini either. So,
right.
But, and I say this from professional experience. Sometimes
I can't wait to see where this statement goes.
Yes. Sometimes that's what people want to buy.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, there simply is a demographic in the gaming community that wants to collect and paint that kind of figure. And if you're throwing a wide net, and I think, you know, 2-3 seasons in, maybe that net's getting pretty wide. So if you want to throw a wide net, you know, maybe you go there, you know? I mean, I know that, you know, when I was sculpting fantasy football miniatures, the Norse women in chainmail bikinis sold a lot better than the, you know, anybody who was wearing a full uniform.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's a cynical thing. It's an easy thing. But, and even though it kind of goes against something I admire a lot about the current state of Guild Ball's design, at some point, it's going to be a way to either bring in a new player or sate the desires, so to speak, of an existing community of players. So maybe don't hurry to get there, but I suspect we're going to get there eventually.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't say that from a disappointed, because I will be in that line. I very much enjoy, you know, attractive cheesecakey models, but I enjoy them just as much as I enjoy non-cheesecakey, well-sculpted models. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I cannot, without being a hypocrite, criticize it all. So now the other team that I had mentioned that I was interested in from a model standpoint is the Circus Guild. I just think that would be an incredibly fun team to paint, like a Victorian circus. You know, the strongman, the clown, the ringmaster, the organ grinder, the bearded lady, you know, an acrobat or two. I mean, from a gameplay standpoint, maybe I see them being somewhat unionish in that maybe they don't have a lot of harmony together because they're all kind of their own act. So maybe they've got individually impressive abilities, but really nothing that overlaps and sort of gives those advantages. You know, I think that there's some maybe some interesting gameplay there.
So you would go that way instead of having them be like a super synergistic team where individually they're not great, but as long as you're synergizing off each other.
Well, I think that if they were all like one troop of acrobats, you would maybe go with that super synergy. But I think that if you wanted to sort of represent the broad scope of the circus, maybe they're each not. Their own act. Like maybe the super synergistic team, I'd maybe go with like the Thespian Guild, right? Because they need to like work together to put on the performance. So maybe they super synergize, and they'd be in a similar like entertainer mold to the circus. But I think the circus maybe is a pack of individuals who are maybe not greater than the sum of their parts. So, but I would really love to paint that team. Most of all, and first and foremost, I want a strong man and a bearded lady and a clown and a ringmaster and an organ grinder. That's what I want. So get on it. So I think that there's, and of course, since the first day of the Kickstarter, this idea of let's suggest new guilds has been wildly fruitful as a topic in Guild Ball.
The game is ripe for it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The fact that, you can jump in there, come up with your own guild, and what are the other guilds that haven't been dipped into yet? So,
well, and in fact, on a lark this week, I posted some concept art for the first couple players for the Podcasters Guild. So go dig that up on Twitter. It's mildly amusing. If you ever wanted to see a drawing of me wearing Flint's pants. So maybe you didn't want to see a drawing of me wearing Flint's pants. But I figured it had to be done at some point. So the Podcasters Guild, that's, season 3, I think. Is when that's going to happen.
And it had to be gerbils for the...
No, they're guinea pigs. They're not gerbils. Darn it, get my annoying loud pets right. So good fun had by all. All right, so I think that is all the questions that we're really going to be able to address tonight. It is getting late, and we have work tomorrow. So I am going to say thanks for coming in and having a chat with us tonight, Bill.
Absolutely. And thank you very much to the listeners for dipping in and responding enough so that we can all see the nice art, or everybody gets to see the nice art, and for, listening.
Absolutely, because this would be kind of sad if nobody was listening. But I'd probably do it anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, that wouldn't stop us.
No. I may not record it, but I would be doing it anyway. So, all right. Good night, everybody.
Knees up. Watch the knives. To join the conversation, comment on the show post at guildballtonight.com or email us at guildballtonight@gmail.com. Phil can also be heard on the Game Punting podcast. Bill can also be heard on the Gamers Lounge podcast. Check them out on iTunes.
And now for this week's edition of the Guild Ball Club Roundup. To get your club included in this list, send us an email at guildballtonight@gmail.com. Include the name, location, and best contact method, and we'll get you in the next show. You'll need to resubmit your club about every 3 episodes, so keep that in mind. Armada Games in Tampa, Florida. Find them at armadagames.com. 1066 Wargaming in Hastings, UK. Find them on Facebook. Capital Guild Ball at Dream Wizards in Rockville, Maryland. Find them on Facebook. 2-6 Wargaming in Cambridge, UK. Find them on Facebook. Warhammer Gaming Club in Sunderland, UK. Find them on Facebook. Siege Tabletop in Beverly, UK. Find them on Facebook. Sheffield and Rotterdam Gaming Club in Sheffield, UK. Find them on Facebook. Group North Wargaming Society in Adelaide, Australia. Find them on Facebook. All right, let's find somebody who isn't on Facebook. Leeds Night Owls in Leeds, UK. Available in Google. Chelmsford Bunker in Chelmsford, UK. Slayer Gaming in Mansfield, UK. And Thomas House in Dublin, Ireland. Not sure how to get a hold of any of them, but they're probably on Facebook. War and Peace Gaming Club in San Diego, UK, definitely is on Facebook. And Outpost in Sheffield, UK, is, last but not least, unsurprisingly, on Facebook.
It is time once again for another installment of Ox's Poetry Corner.
You guys are lazy, using feedback as content. You can do better. So yeah, and